Hello everyone, I hope you're having a great day so far and welcome back to the Lost in History series. And we are diving back to the World Championship game between the world champion William Steinitz and his challenger Gunsberg. It was a game played in New York in 1891 and today we are covering the game number 60. I have already covered two more games from this World Championship game. You can find both in Lost in History series. One of them by William Steinitz, where he implemented the Queen's Gambit, and one with Gunsberg being white, and he implemented the beautiful Evans Gambit, a very nice miniature against the world champion. If you haven't checked those games out, do check it out. I will leave the link in the description. And well, again, game number 16, Gunsberg has white pieces and Steinitz is black, and Steinitz is currently leading the tournament with 2 extra points ahead of Gunsberg. So definitely Gunsberg need to win this match. Okay, e4 by Gunsberg, and we again have a very nice Evans Gambit with bishop c4, bishop c5 and pawn to b4, the Evans Gambit, where Steinitz again repeat the same variation with bishop a5, and after castles he played queen to f6. Those who have seen that game may remember that after pawn to d4, Steinitz continued with knight h6, where Gunsberg completely outplayed him and won a very nice game. But here Steinitz played pawn to h6, which he had played in game number 14, where he actually held the position to draw, and he is repeating it again. But now Gunsberg changed the move and played a novelty at that time, queen to a4. And it was in this position that we have a completely new game, and this novelty was never repeated again either. So let's see. Your bishop is pressured, pawn to d5 will remove the defender, remove the knight which is defending the bishop. So you definitely have to move the bishop to b6 and bishop to b5. Makes sense, you are attacking the knight, so your next move will be take the knight and take the pawn in the center. So you have to defend it, and Steinitz played knight to e7. So once you take the knight, then I recapture with my knight, keeping the defender of the e5 pawn. So bishop to a3. This is natural square for this bishop, of course, attacking the knight and also just putting the bishop on the very nice diagonal. E takes d4. So Steinitz decided to capture in the center, and pawn to e5 by Gunsberg. A very nice move and something which automatically played by most of the Evans Gambit player. And if you have played against Evans Gambit before, you know that you're never supposed to capture this pawn, because if you capture, your king is in the center, and if the rook somehow lands on e1, you are dead lost. But this is one of those positions where you have to calculate it out, and the best move in this position is capture on e5. However, after e5 in the game, Steinitz played queen to g6. I'm just going to show what would have happened if black decided to capture on e5, because it's a very long and disgusting engine moves. So even in 1891, I doubt even the world champion would be able to find this all. So the line starts with a knight takes and queen takes, of course, and white would play knight to d2. Sacrifice the pawn on c3 to play knight c4 with the attack on the queen and the bishop, which would be very good for white, so you don't want to allow that. And rook to e1 is also a threat, so you have to play very carefully in this position. You have to find this only move, pawn to a6, which attacks the bishop with the queen. And white would actually defend the bishop simply by the rook, because the pawn can never capture the bishop. This rook is hanging. So, and here, believe it or not, there is only one move which keeps the balance in the position, and which is inhuman: short castles. Because rook to e1 was the idea, and what will happen after rook to e1? Well, queen to f5. And after you capture the knight, which is a free knight, now after suddenly say d to c3 opens up a attack on the f2 pawn, and after knight f3, c2. All of these moves are forced from white side and black side, the best moves according to engine. And well, believe it or not, even though black is down a piece, the rook is under attack and everything and all, somehow tactics works out for black in this position, and in the end of the day, black will be better. But okay, that's what you have to see before you capture the pawn on e5. But Steinitz just believed Gunsberg and played queen to g6. Okay, so now Gunsberg just took the pawn on d4, and that's a very nice pawn because now white has a very nice pawn chain, threatening pawn to d5. So Steinitz played knight on d5, so the pawn cannot push to d5. But that means opening this bishop, and you are never castling anymore. So you're not castling. That means white can take their sweet time to just develop the initiative, because as long as you're not castling, your rook will not come back in the game. And there is a constant problem of this light square bishop in the Evans Gambit, so that's also a bad piece. So Gunsberg just continued with rook to e1 like nothing happened, putting the rook on the semi-open file. And knight to f4 by Steinitz, threatening queen into g2, direct checkmate. So pawn to g3 has to be played. Knight to h3 can be played in this position and might be a better move, but Steinitz played queen to g4 with the attack on the knight first, and white simply defended with other knight to d2. And now knight to h3 check, king to g2, and suddenly it looks like this knight, this queen and this knight is somehow pressuring this king, but white has very sufficient defender around the king, and also like you cannot really put another piece. Let's say your bishop cannot really jump to g4 or anything, or like this bishop cannot really participate in the attack, so your attack is going nowhere. If you play knight to f4 now, then king to h1, and that's fine. You have to move the knight again, and then let's say you play knight to h3 back, so attack the pawn, just rook to e2, and as long as you are not castling, white is just better. So after knight h3 check, king g2, black means Steinitz played knight to g5, hoping that white takes this knight, so h takes and opens up the rook, which would be very good for black, actually straight out winning for black. And of course you are not going to capture the knight. Your knight on f3 is very well guarded with the other knight and the king, so you don't really have to care about that. And well, a very mysterious move, bishop to b2 was played, but there is already a winning move after knight to g5. So if you want, try to pause the video here and try to find the best move for white while I give you a couple of seconds. Alright, so the move is absolute brilliant, pawn to d5, opening up the queen exchange. And why would you actually put the queens on exchange? I mean, your opponent's king is in the center and you want to preserve the queens, right? Otherwise your attacking chances will be killed. But in this particular position, after d5, queen takes a4, knight, bishop takes a4, and let's say knight to d4, knight d4, bishop d4, rook to c1, attacking the c7 pawn, bishop to b6. All of these moves were forced, and now you are left with this position where white has amazing bishop pair, amazing rooks on the open file, beautiful pawns in the center which is rolling down, and this king, this poor king which cannot castle, and this poor bishop and rooks which can never come back in the game. A sample line would be to h4, knight h7 is only move, and after e6, well, you can see that you cannot capture the pawn because this bishop pins this pawn. And well, this is very much resignable, this point. You cannot even castle because of this bishop. So this pawn is pinned. I'm going to capture this pawn with a discover check next. And yeah, you basically resign in this position. So that's the idea, and that's the problem that black is facing. Black king is in the center. And even after the queens are getting trading off, it is still white who is attacking. But after knight to g5, bishop to b2 was played, just defending the pawn and keeping the eye on that e5 pawn once the d5 is played. Well, the idea is if you castle, then white is definitely going to play pawn to d5. Let's say castles pawn to d5, and this knight doesn't have the best of the squares to go to. So, well, Steinitz after bishop to b2 played knight to e7 directly. Maybe with the idea of stopping pawn to d5, so the knight would capture, and also some knight d5, knight f5 action, so the knight can jump to the attack to the white king maybe. But um, William Steinitz is trying to, attack, but white pieces are just too active, and white played bishop to e2 with a very simple idea of moving this knight and attacking this queen. So knight to e6, because first you have to look for this check, and knight f4 is very strong move. So king to h1, simply removing the king from the check, and now the knight will move and it will open up an attack to the queen. So Steinitz played queen to f5, and this is where the magic happened. So I would like you to pause the video. It's white to move, it's Gunsberg to move, and try to find the best move which was played by Gunsberg in this position. Okay, so congratulations to everyone who found this beautiful knight to h4. Simply attacking the queen, and once you realize this queen is lacking some squares, you will play knight to h4 automatically. Now, the main idea is if queen to h7, that's a very sad square for the queen anyways. But, well, the question is, after queen to h7, well, white will simply develop with rook a to d1. And let's say black castles, then after knight to c4. Well, attacking the bishop. Let's say rook b8, because you have to capture with the a pawn. And bishop to d3, caged this this queen. And after g6, it's a very sad queen, right? It's not going anywhere, and tactically it does not work. After bishop to a3 and queen a7 coming in next move, it is catastrophe for black. It is just resignable. So after knight to h4, of course, William Steinitz took the pawn on f2. Good or bad, you basically have to grab the material and hope to survive. But again, for the last time, pause the video, try to find what Gunsberg played in this position, which forces the resignation from William Steinitz. Okay, so congratulations to everyone who found this knight to e4, beautiful knight to e4, which traps the queen. So yeah, I mean, that's it. That's the queen trap, and it was in this position where William Steinitz resigned the game. Move number 21, and what a beautiful miniature by Gunsberg, again in that Evans Gambit. So here you resign because your queen only has this one square, and wherever you move this bishop, let's say f1 or b5, doesn't matter. Now the rook attacks the queen, and the queen actually has no square. This is covered, and everything else you can figure it out by yourself. Every other square of the queen is covered by white pieces. So you are going to lose the queen. With that, there's no way you are going to continue. So yeah, after knight to e4, Gunsberg won another game, getting close to the equality. And let's see if Gunsberg is able to get the crown, or William Steinitz will able to defend. So yeah, that's the game, that's the video, guys. I hope you like this one, and if you do, then well, I will see you on the next one. Bye.